Hey, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the Anonymous Throwdown Podcast, Season 2, Episode 3. Are we on Episode 3?
Yep, that's right.
And today we're talking about Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League because for whatever reason that game still exists. It hasn't been canceled yet, and they're still making content for it. Also, not sure why they're continuing to do that. Maybe it's like a humiliation fantasy. They just enjoy being embarrassed on social media, and they're just going to continue releasing content. I have no idea. Not only that, they're releasing Mrs. Freeze is the character. So Killer Frost, I guess, was booked, so we had to gender bend Mr. Freeze. That makes sense. Any thoughts on this, guys?
Sucks ass. Okay, on a serious note, I think that the Mrs. Freeze thing is I don't know, it just feels stupid because it's another Arkham character that we know has a conclusion that they're ripping out from the multiverse just to shove down people's throats. What do you think, Jake?
I am in disbelief at just that they thought this would be a $1 billion franchise, that this would be their big live service thing that would just make so much money. I think that from season 1, we kind of knew that we were on a dangerous trajectory because it didn't add any new story content. Joker was still just based around guns like all the other characters. And it's all just based around missions that people already didn't like in the base game. And that's what we're getting more of here. We're getting more rinse and repeat boss fights. We're not getting new story. And that's part of it. Like if we were going to get some kind of interesting narrative behind Mrs. Freeze, okay, maybe I'd be somewhat interested, but we're not. We're going to get like a 2-minute introductory cutscene. And then you're going to just spend 2 or 3 hours leveling her up, doing the same.
I'm looking at the thing now, dude. And, not only does episode 3 have a Superman boss fight, but guess what? Get this. Episode 4 also has a Superman boss fight. They're doing the same boss fight.
But Miller with 17 L's on Twitter said that actually this DLC is going to be great and it's going to retcon the whole story and fix everything and make the game great. Didn't you see his tweets?
Yeah, that's what all the leakers and all the fans say. They're like, man, we're going to have like this great DLC. But you know what it's going to really be? It's going to be, again, a motion comic intro, a 5-minute cutscene. And if the Justice League does come back, if Flash comes back, they're going to do that same formula.
No, I don't think so, Marcel. I believe Miller. Miller said it's going to be great, so I believe Miller. Sorry.
God damn, I don't trust that.
Okay. I was more. That's one direction we could take it. Okay. So, but here's the thing, though, with this game is you look at every aspect of it. I mean, there's nothing good about it. There's nothing redeeming about it. And so when you're making DLC, you would think, okay, maybe you address something about, because like the whole game sucks, everything about it, right? The story, the gameplay, the character development, the main characters, the Justice League sucks. Everything sucks. It's horrible. So can't you just introduce one thing in the DLC that we're like, okay, that's good? You know, I just don't understand why you're doubling down on the format of like, hey, you know, you want more looter shooter missions? Okay, we'll give you more. We'll give you more reskinned boss fights with the same freaking, but this time with a different character that is not even a character anybody wanted to see. I mean, Killer Frost, that would make sense. I would be excited for that for season 2. But I'm bewildered. I don't understand. And as I tweeted this, that I think that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is the biggest embarrassment in gaming history. And the reason why is because, no, it's not the worst game ever made. There are many games that are worse. There are games that are literal like 0 out of 10s. The game like just doesn't work or like it's just fucking shit. Okay, so it's not the worst video game ever made, but it's the biggest embarrassment. It's the biggest flop in gaming history because never before has a studio gone from making a top 5 video game of all time. Batman Arkham City is maybe you could even argue top 3 video game, but safely top 5, in my opinion, video game of all time. Never have we seen a studio go from that to making a literal piece of shit 2 out of 10 awful game. This is a first. We've never seen this before. And so to me, and people pointed out like, well, like what about Anthem? What about Cyberpunk 2077? No, it does not compare to the precipitous fall of Batman Arkham City to 10 years later getting Captain Boomerang and Mrs. Freeze it doesn't compare. It's not in the same galaxy of comparison, in my opinion. And so Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League is the biggest embarrassment in gaming history ever.
Yeah,
It's
I
certainly
agree with that.
all, yeah, total narrative disaster. I actually do have a bit of a hot take though, and I'm curious. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this. But I've been thinking about how could they have fixed this? Like this situation where the game came out, no one really liked the story, the gameplay was just too repetitive. How could they have like turned that around? Because we can sit and talk for hours about like what the game should have been. Like it should have built on the dual play system of Arkham Knight. It should have had a much better story. Maybe it shouldn't have even been a Suicide Squad game. But at the end of the day, we got the game we got. I think that their approach should have been first apologizing to the community. We have David Zaslav on the quarterly earnings calls saying, yeah, this game was a complete disaster. But then publicly, they're still pumping out content. They're still nickel and diming the in-game store. So that feels like an inconsistent approach. So I think first they should have just apologized to the community, said, we recognize that this wasn't the game that you wanted, and we're going to turn it around. Now, the other option is they could have just completely canned the game, recognized that it wasn't working, and gone on to do like an Arkham Asylum remake or something. But if they really wanted to stick with this game and making content, I think they should have just delayed every piece of post-launch content and reworked it into like a 2.0 patch where they rebrand it into Suicide Squad Save the Justice League. It's like 3 additional hours of story that's more fun, where you're going around and saving your favorite heroes instead of killing them. And, you know, they could have added so many cool things. They could have added a PvP mode. They could have added 4 new playable characters at launch that you don't have to buy. They could have added all the cosmetics and emotes for free. They could have added some support squad missions where like Bizarro and Metallo and Parasite are in Metropolis and you have to go fight them. I think that should have been the approach, like looking at the feedback, what fans actually wanted to see. And I think they could have turned this into an 8 out of 10 game, but instead they just keep digging themselves into a deeper hole by adding more content that no one wants.
I have an idea. Marcel, do you want to go?
No, go ahead. What's your idea?
My idea is, I mean, Jake, you pretty much just said this, but I completely agree that what the game could have been is think Gotham City Imposters of PvP, right? Where two characters, think of basically, here's the best way to describe it. Overwatch with DC villains, right? That could have worked. That could have, and you actually could have made a whole story about DC villains fighting each other, almost like an Injustice style of thing, I guess, in terms of the story. But it could have been like, it could have been like, I don't know, the Joker versus insert villain, Lex Luthor. I don't know. Yeah. And like, you know what I'm saying?
A good way to do that would be like Brainiac just pulls them from the multiverse. You're fighting as like multiple different versions of like Parasite or like Joker, and you go in there and fight like, you know, the Suicide Squad. And, you know, you have your own version of the Suicide Squad. That would be cool. That would be actually
and then
really
you
neat.
build in a PvP component, because the thing about all these games that have games as a service that make a unbelievable amount of money is that almost all of them have multiplayer. It's PvP. People aren't getting on Call of Duty and Fortnite and all these games and spending billions of dollars on microtransactions to shoot AI. You know, this isn't like 2012. You know, I mean, that was the thing for a little bit. Even Destiny, which was known for streamlining that sort of gameplay loop of the PvE looter shooter mining for gear and that kind of thing. I mean, that had PvP too. People forget that. And so, you know, for this sort of game, it doesn't have any depth to it in the PvE component. And by the way, it's the same problem with Marvel's Avengers. It's the same thing. And so that's the thing that behooves you the most about this game is you look at it basically just repeated the same mistakes as Marvel's Avengers. It was the same exact problem. Marvel's Avengers could have been something if there was a PvP, almost like in Battlefield 2, you have the Jedi versus Jedi heroes versus villains, whatever it's called, mode. You know what I'm saying? So that could have made it more interesting. And so if each of the characters had a gameplay loop similar to Overwatch, and it was like fighting against other human beings playing as these characters, that would have at least been interesting. But of course, that would require more gameplay novelty, and Killer Shark, you know, can't have a machine gun. That doesn't make sense. He would have to be a brawler, and it would be more complicated to make. So, so yeah, I mean, the PvE sort of wave-based looter shooter stuff is so tired. Every game since 2015 that's done it has flopped, as far as I'm aware. So I don't know why you would repeat that, but.
Well, I don't think with the current team at Rocksteady, if we're going by, all history, they're doing the same thing. They have the same story. Sefton Hill, Jamie Walker left, and we're left with the team that is actually still there. I don't think they could have done anything to save this game, honestly. Like, they could try, like the first thing that you said, Jake, repackaging the story and whatnot, and kind of bringing it out as something new. That could work, but the people there didn't even want to do multiplayer. So, like, would they really even be able to? And would they even be able to, get WB on their side to do that? And also, I think just after the story, if they stick with that same story afterwards, what to do to save this game, man, if they took a 7-month hiatus, that shit's it's gonna kill the game immediately. I mean, like, the way it came out already, it would have been like under 20 players on Steam by the time they put out their first DLC thing, and maybe it would have gone up like a little bit. I don't think it would have saved the game though. Like, no matter what it would have done.
But I think what Jake is getting at though is that it wouldn't save it in the end. But if I'm understanding your question right, it's more like, how could you have fixed it in the framing of it,
right,
like in the entire concept?
I just, like, honestly, with the thing that they did, the concept, the gameplay that they did, the only thing that they could do is just introduce more or different bosses, different enemy types, and actually doing something like that in a way. But the gameplay within itself and the story that it follows, it's so hard to even, like, in many ways redeem that. And I don't even know if bringing back Batman and doing all this stuff, plus if they already had a plan in mind with Kevin Conroy's Batman, they already recorded stuff, it would I guess it would be kind of hard to like rework that in many ways, or even like rework the whole story by bringing in like the former actors or whatnot. So I think they would have to be stuck with what they had, and it would have been maybe even worse than what we got, which is, I mean, it wouldn't be that surprising, honestly. But like right now, they're doing their best, but they're doing shit. It's really bad. Like, I can't see any way of this game ever redeeming. Like, there's no timeline where this game could have been redeemed from where it kind of released.
It's a weird situation because live service, the whole idea is that it's something that can improve and evolve over time based on feedback. But reading Jason Schreier's article on it, the developers don't even really know how to implement new features to the game. Not because they're not talented or great developers, but because the way that Jamie Walker and Sefton Hill captained the ship, they implemented so many hot fixes that weren't like true fixes to the code, that it's just this bloated mess of a game that the developers really, I think, have just struggled trying to implement new things into. And it's such an interesting situation that we find ourselves in with live service superhero games, because I'll be honest, I'm not 100% opposed to the idea. Like, if Arkham Knight was still getting content to this day, where it was like they're going to add Prometheus and Bane into the side missions of the game, and there's new challenge maps and cosmetics, I would be there. If they added a multiplayer mode to the game, I'd play it. If Spider-Man 2 did the same thing, where they said every single month we're going to add a 2-hour-long DLC for the next 6 months. The first 3 will focus on Peter Parker's early days as Spider-Man, and then the next 3 will focus on Miles after the story of Spider-Man 2. Like, I like the idea of games continuing to receive updates, but the problem is that in the case of Marvel's Avengers and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, we're seeing these companies that almost treat it more like an infinite money glitch. Like, oh, we can just reskin these missions and sell them again, and people will be
right. It's like, I'm not going to do extra work, but we're going to make more money. Yep.
Yes.
You know what's a good argument for the live service for superheroes is games like Marvel's Rivals. I don't know if you guys have seen the gameplay. I literally put like maybe 25, 26 hours on the closed like alpha that they had or whatever. And they have like another beta coming out next month on consoles. So definitely try to get a code, because that game is like a lot of fun. And it's in the same vein of like Overwatch, where they're probably going to make the most money off of skins. And that's a really good idea for the superheroes. Just have a free to play PvP game that's almost identical to like Overwatch. Have these spectacular characters do like crazy shit, and have like, good time with your friends, and then buy some skins. And I think that format right there is actually a good way to do it, because that game is actually fun. There's things that are actually of value in that game, and I could actually see that game being popular in like, a live service type of way. And with games like, Suicide Squad, they don't really have much to offer. Like, their skins are trash. The story is garbage. The gameplay is repetitive. It's not fun. They don't add anything new in the DLC. It's just the same fucking shit over and over with reskinned guns and reskin characters. But at least with like, that Overwatch clone, they could add new maps, they could add new game modes, they could add all these different things to that type of stuff and kind of like make the game's longevity like a lot, more than what it would be if it was like Suicide Squad. So I think Overwatch type of clones like that, I think DC needs to jump on that immediately, because they could easily do something exactly like Marvel Rivals and like make so much more money than what they made with Suicide Squad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how long has DC Universe Online been around? Like, even that was a game that catered more to what players wanted to see from a multiplayer game.
Right. Yeah, that's been out for like decades, like 20 years, I'm sure.
Well, I think that hopefully they're moving on soon. I mean, really, I implore, just like, please, just put yourself out of your misery, move on to the next, just take your L and move on. That's fine. Like, we all take L's in life. Happens. Take your L and move on. Stop trying to resist it. There's nothing that will save this game. Nothing. I mean, even if what Miller said is true, which it's not, because it hasn't happened, that the whole story is going to get fixed, nobody cares, because there's under 100 people playing the game. Let's say the new DLC pack comes out. You're lucky if you get 5,000 people. I don't even see that happening. I think it'll be probably around 1,000. If you get 1,000 people, okay, but how many millions of people saw on Twitter Batman being unceremoniously murked? What percentage of those millions of people are ever going to find out that the story was quote unquote fixed here? So you can't fix it. You can't.
Well, yeah, because the main game story didn't tease a comeback. That's like, if they wanted to have people like return from all the characters, the game should have ended with them like saving the Flash or something, or at least setting a precedent of like, we just learned that Flash is actually alive or something. And that's how they should have ended that story if that's how they wanted to tease it. But I'm with you. Like, I'm not super excited to save Batman in a motion comic down the line.
Motion comic, and then he's gonna have 4 minutes of dialogue in a cutscene where he just gets locked up in like a prison or something, and then you get to talk to him. Optional dialogue in the Hall of Justice. I've been saying this. They're gonna just be optional dialogue in the Hall of Justice. They're not gonna be anything else.
Yeah, no, I'm with Kobe. I think that they need to move on. I actually, if they want a quick turnaround to kind of regain some public favor, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and really, I feel like doing an Arkham Asylum remake might be the best way to go, just because that's something that they've already done. It's something that, you don't necessarily have to go like re-record all the lines. Even you could do what they did with The Last of Us Part 1 in 2023 or 2022, whenever that one came out. And so you just take all the original assets from that game, where you have Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill's dialogue, and you just rebuild it from the ground up in Unreal Engine 5. Maybe you like reimagine some of the missions or boss fights to play out a little bit differently. You take some of the criticism that game got back in the day to heart, and like, that would be a great way for them to not have to spend the next 5 years figuring out what the next game is going to be, and then another 5 actually developing it. That's a game that I could see them putting together in 2 to 3 years as they figure out, what they want to do after that. But that might be a good way to fix some of the public relations that have been lost with Suicide Squad.
Yeah, it's either that or just make a whole like brand new franchise, like revolving around the Arkham name. Bring in Roger Craig Smith and just or I guess kind of just like reboot it from the very get-go, make a whole new franchise. But it's so hard because their public reception, like Kobe said, they've gone from 10 out of 10 games, like almost 3 bangers in a row. Everybody can argue that Arkham Knight's like, mid or whatever, the boss battles. But that game,
it's 9 out of 10.
It's a 9 out of 10. No, but like the whole public reception of like IGN and all that stuff, it was all 10 out of 10s on the mainstream review forums. So in terms of public reception, those games are 10 out of 10s. And then you come over to freaking Suicide Squad over here, this freaking pile of garbage. And it's like most critics gave it like a 4 or 5. Most people gave it like a 3, 4, and most people hate the fucking game. Like a majority of people hate the game. There's a small minority of a community of people that like this game, and it's just like the people that might come back,
20 people. It's literally like 20,
like 20, like 30, 40, 50 people that might actually enjoy the mind numbingness of this game.
Probably the extended family of the developers.
Exactly. Probably the developers themselves.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, literally, because it's like on any time on Steam, there's like 100 people playing, and it's like Rocksteady has like 400 devs. Like, are they
I
just like,
probably have a better chance of joining with a dev in a game than I do with anybody else, honestly. It's probably true.
so? I mean,
But
are the servers even active? How do you have servers with that few people?
yeah, no, there's people in. I mean, you could join a game, but like I doubt there's
It's just
you
probably
could
going to be somebody like in Australia because there's just so few people online, you know?
exactly. Yeah, it's so scattered. But for their next game, I mean, after that, it's going to be the stain of Suicide Squad. They're not going to be like the developers that brought you Suicide Squad kill the Justice League. No, they're going to be like the guys that brought you Arkham. They're making you another Batman game. What?
Yeah.
What Suicide Squad? Huh? What? Nope, don't worry about that. And it's still
See,
going to
I
be
think to. Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Sorry.
No, go ahead. That's it. That was all I was
I was going to say, back to the broader question that Jake asked on the
Mhm.
how the game could have been saved is, I actually do think there's a way. Like, if you brought back Mark Hamill and put him as the face of the game, and it's basically Arkham versus Joker, and maybe you set the game before Arkham City. Obviously, he's dead. And granted, everybody would cry and complain, "Oh my God, Joker! All they do is make money in the Joker." Okay, well, they used King Shark, and we saw how that worked out. Okay, so maybe they should actually stick to the Joker. That's just my opinion. So basically, if they had some game that's like led by the Joker set before the events of Arkham City, and it's like this vast villains versus villains kind of thing, and you can bring in every single villain and make it like Overwatch with DC. I mean, that could have been really interesting. And I know Marvel's doing their own version of Overwatch and that kind of thing, but I could see that really working, especially if there is a plot set in the Arkhamverse that involves these characters that we really like. But that's another problem that they essentially did, is that they followed up the events of Batman Arkham Knight, but didn't bring in any of the characters that we actually like. You know what I'm saying? So we didn't see Tim Drake and Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon or really anybody that we had made connections with in the Arkhamverse. And we saw Batman for 5 minutes to get shot in the face. That doesn't count. And so really, in the grand scheme of things, it's not really a sequel to Arkham Knight, versus they could have made it a little bit more connected to Arkham in that regard. So again, I think that probably would have been an example of a direction to take it that people would have complained about, but then the game would have came out and liked it, versus this game, which was everybody was excited for the game and like, oh my God, they're doing something different. Finally, no more Batman, no more Joker. And then we actually got it, and then nobody played it, so it would have been an inverse.
Yeah, I get that. Suicide Squad.
Okay, so do we want to talk about the Superman movie?
Hell yeah, bro. I'm probably the most excited out of everybody here about that shit. I think
give us a recap of the set photos.
Okay, so
because people are complaining about the costumes. So
okay, people aren't. There's like a small. Okay, they are complaining about the new costumes like Cockerel and Green Lantern. But to like sum up the whole thing, I'm pretty sure it started off just in Cleveland, and the first like couple set photos were Superman and Mr. Terrific. And I think most people, a majority of people, think that those two costumes are perfect. Like, what do you guys think of the Mr. Terrific suit and the Super? I think the Mr. Terrific suit is like 100% spot on to the comics. And the Superman suit has some, like, I guess, evolving to do. But I did tweet out, I said we should probably take the same approach as we did with the Batman. Like, that suit isn't like your, traditional Batman suit, but it's still a very, it's a Batman suit. It's Batman. It's the most, like, I'm not going to say it's the most Batman suit out of all the Batman suits, but compared to like a lot of them, that's like what I would see being in a realistic form, like what Batman would look like.
But it's still good. It's still good. And every, I mean, I should be careful in making such a declarative statement, but most of the time, the best suit is going to come in the second or third movie anyway. It's going to come later. You know what I'm saying? Nobody looks at like the original Captain America suit and they're like, oh, this is the best one. Or like Batman Begins and like, oh, this is the best Batman suit. Like, obviously, It got better as time went on. And so the same is going to be true here. His suit will certainly be better in 5 years if the universe expands in the way that we all hope it does. But I think the suit is good. I don't necessarily understand the Twitter freak out over the first one. I did think like the whole CGI AI background was a bit, I don't know, a little bit weird, I guess. But overall, I thought the suit looked good, I think. And so in terms of the set photos, I agree with you about the Superman suit and Mr. Terrific. And I also think that the other complaints about the suits are overblown. It's all taken out of context without, the final touches of, you got to consider that you've got lighting and color grading to do and all these different things that you're not seeing when somebody's taking a photo from their apartment building on the 10th floor in Cleveland.
Exactly.
You know, you're
Yeah.
not getting that context of how it's actually going to look in the film.
Yeah, Green Lantern's gonna have like light around him. Hawkgirl's still gonna have wings. Like no one's considering that Hawkgirl's actually gonna have wings, and she doesn't have any because they're gonna CGI that in the fucking. That's gonna be something.
And can I just say that I'm so glad that you know, I feel pretty confident what James Gunn is doing. There are some questionable things in terms of I think that some of the characters he's trying to roll out are just weird, like D-list characters that he shouldn't prioritize. But the broader picture of it is that I'm so excited that the first Superman movie, basically the first installment into this franchise, we're getting Mr. Terrific and Hawkgirl and Green Lantern and all these characters. Like all the time with every iteration of Superman and Batman and all these things, like the first one, they try to make it like really, again, this is kind of going back to our episode 2 conversation, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but they try to make it very like grounded and not too elaborate in terms of bringing in so many characters. They almost want to like hide the fact of the comics. And I love that in this first movie, it's not the same origin story over and over again that we've gotten a million times, which Man of Steel is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not shitting on the movie, but I'm just saying we've seen it before. We've seen that. And I love that they're like, okay, we're skipping that. We're jumping right into it. I'm sure there'll be a flashback or two here or there, but even then, maybe not. And we're just going to jump right in and boom, Green Lantern's here, Hawkgirl's here. I just love that. I love that creative choice. It's a bold choice to make, but I think it is really, really wise to do. And it's more exciting than just having it be like, oh, it's just Superman and we're going to like, you know, get his backstory for the first 45 minutes and then we're going to ease into it. And then like, I remember watching Man of Steel with my father and we were like 50 minutes in and he's like, so like, when's he going to be Superman? Like what, you know, he was like, get on with it, you know, and he's not a DC nerd like me. So, I mean, I loved it and that wasn't my complaint, but I kind of understand that perspective from like a normie fan, you know what I'm saying? So I'm glad that we're just jumping right into it.
Yeah, my mom had to cover her ears for that last part because it was so unexpected. We're like, damn, the third act was like explosions. Okay, this is cool.
She had to close her ears for the third act of it.
Bro, it's okay. So I think the third act starts like when Zod arrives or whatever, and then it's just bombastic from fucking Smallville all the way to Metropolis, just explosion after explosion after explosion. I like Man of Steel, and I honestly liked it because of that reason. When I was just in theaters, just like it was blasting in my face.
I always loved because as everybody knows, famously, I saw Batman v Superman many times in IMAX, and it was always so amusing to me. Like the first couple of showings, like the first weekend, how many like grandmas would be in there and like 80-year-olds and just people like this, and just to see them like watch that Doomsday scene, just like they were just mind blown. Like Doomsday is jumping in like a CGI Ninja Turtle, and we've got Wonder Woman and it's just the most cracked out, and then like the Hans Zimmer guitar riffs in the background, and I just watched like grandmas watch.
Dude, when I saw BVS, I went with 3 of my friends from high school, and there was a guy in front of us that every time there was a little joke or reference, he would literally like burst out laughing. So that Joker reference when like Bruce Wayne and Clark meet, dude, he literally like burrowed out laughing. I'm like, dude, it's not that funny. I'm like, holy shit. I love the theater experience. But what do you think, Jake? What do you think about the Superman vibe?
Yeah, so Superman was definitely my first like comic book movie that I was really into from like a young age. Like the Christopher Reeve movies were my childhood. I had so much fun watching those growing up. And Man of Steel was a take that I really enjoyed as well. It was definitely different, but I enjoyed it. And this feels like an interesting combination of the two, where it feels more modern than what we got obviously back in the 70s, but it does feel a little bit more in line with what I expect from the character in terms of tone. I think that the set photos look great. I actually made the mistake of doubting James Gunn's wardrobe choices back during like the Suicide Squad set photos. And then that movie came out and everything looked great. So I'm not going to make the same mistake. Like, yeah, I think the suit looks a little baggy, but I haven't seen it in motion. So I don't really feel like I'm qualified to criticize that choice until I see why he made it. It does kind of have like almost a Guardians of the Galaxy look to it. Like he definitely has a particular palette that he goes for, but I think it looks good. I like the vibrance of the color tone, and yeah, I'm excited for it.
One other thing I like about the suit is, like you said, it was baggy, but I mean, they could fix that in post, just make it like a little bit more skin tight potentially. But another thing that it could do is kind of make it look like, of course, it was made. Like they could do a flashback where they show like Martha knitting the suit together, and she's just like, all right, it's a little bit baggy. It might be a little bit too. You might like not grow into it quite yet, or something like that. And that could be, or when he gets a damaged suit too. Something I'm thinking about is like, potentially the damaged suit, the suit gets thrown away and he has to make like a bunch of different, or maybe he has like a closet full of just Superman suits because they get destroyed like every single week or something like that, which I think would be kind of like neat if like, every suit was like sewn together by Martha. So there's like some, it's a good visual like storytelling that they're doing here, because the contrast between Superman and all those other characters too, like everybody's already pointed out the fact that they all work for Maxwell Lord. So it's already like something that you could see. Superman's being the bright, colorful hero, and then you have this army of like guys that are all samey, like characters working for the army. And then they already point out that all the villains are wearing black and whatnot. So there's an obvious visual contrast that a lot of people, Snyder fans, that don't fucking see the actual
storytelling.
But I think that it's going to be amazing. I can't wait for it.
I'm really.
What do you got against Snyder fans?
What'd
you say? What'd you say about Snyder fans? What'd you say about people that like BVS?
You could like BVS, but you're one of those. I was about to say that too when Jake was talking. He said, I like Man of Steel too. We're all Snyder fans. We all like Snyder movies, right?
We're just not insane. Yeah, you're right.
We're not going online saying to restore the Snyderverse in 2024. It's 2024. Zack Snyder's already said he's making like 7 fucking Rebel Moon movies. Go like that shit. Don't watch DC then if you don't like what James Gunn is doing. Don't post pictures of Henry Cavill burning a grave that says rest in piss James Gunn, or like threatening his family, or have like Henry Cavill holding a decapitated freaking James Gunn head. Like, what the fuck is wrong with these guys? They're a whole cult. That's why I got against it.
No, I respect that delineation. There is a distinction between the cult and the general fan base, and of course, I've faced the wrath of it. I mean, that one time when Zach saw my tweet, and then Jay Oliva, and then the other producer guy. I mean, it was for months. I was just getting dogpiled. They would like go to my YouTube comments and find me there, and they would like, some of them would go to like my video from like 5 years ago, and they'd be like, "This video sucks." And Zack Snyder's the best.
It's all over an opinion that you were right about too, because Batman doesn't kill in The Dark Knight Returns, and they always try to.
Well, yeah. See, the problem is I've actually read that book, so yeah, exactly. I know what happens in it. So
see, here's the problem. I don't know if dyslexia works on art, but Zack Snyder has that. I don't know if like you look at an image and you like perceive it as something different, but it's funny because they're always like, "Oh, she turns black and white." But the thing, that's not true. What happens with that character when she's holding the baby or whatnot with the gun, right. She like falls backwards into the darkness, and the baby's still in color. So like, it's so obvious when you actually read it, and you got dogpiled for that shit. I remember that.
Yeah. So, I completely agree. I mean, look, my one gripe about the James Gunn universe up to this point is that I don't think they've committed enough to it. I think that they're actually trying to placate the old universe a little bit too much. I think it should be a total clean break, as we discussed, I believe, in episode 1, that there are some shows that are somehow canon to the new universe, but they were from the old universe, and then they meet the old Justice League, and how are they canon to the new one? And that's what I don't get. Is I think that actually every single character needs to be recast, including ones that you like, including John Cena, everything's got to go. That's my brutal truth of it. And they've done a pretty good job of most of that, but they just need to go final.
I'll argue with that. Argue with that right there, honestly. I think that they should keep like certain characters, like if they keep like Amanda Waller, or if they keep like John Cena and stuff like that. I think those C-list, D-list characters that in the long term, like, I don't think John Cena is going to play a massive role in like a freaking Justice League Part 3 movie or something. Like, they're not going to have him coming out of an Infinity freaking like Infinity War or whatnot, or like Endgame, where he's coming out of the portal and he's going to be a part of the team. I don't think that they're going to go that far with the character. So I think characters like that are kind of in the background, that don't really matter, that already have good things going for them. Like Peacemaker actually has something like that, has something going for it. And if I feel like if they retcon it in a way that's, I mean, in many ways, that show is a weird parody. I don't want to say it's a parody, but like it's a weird show. And I feel like it could work for a reboot, and the jokes that they can make for that would actually work in many ways. But for like the bigger characters, I think, of course, they have to like reboot. Like the fact, when I saw that Gal Gadot might have been Wonder Woman in this universe, I'm like, that would be the worst.
So
decision
Amanda Waller
imaginable.
has met both the Ben Affleck Batman and the new Batman. How does that make sense?
So Amanda Waller probably wasn't the best choice. Get her out of here. I understand that.
Well,
Recast
but
Amanda
here's
Waller.
the thing, to give credence to your point, though, is like, who are you going to cast that's a better Amanda Waller than Viola Davis? You know what I'm saying? Like, she's perfect
true, yeah.
for it. So that's the hard part, is like, fuck. I mean, you can't get rid of Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. That's the hard part.
Like, yeah, it's hard to get rid of. Yeah,
but
it's like hard to get rid of Margot
continuity
Robbie
doesn't
and all
make
that
sense.
stuff.
It's like, but so Viola Davis has interacted with the old and the new Suicide Squad and the new one that's going to be like it. I don't know, Jake. What do you think about this?
Yeah, so kind of like we talked about last time, I do think that there's potential that the general audience gets a little confused. And every time I say that, there's comments that are like, no, it makes perfect sense. That's an Elseworld. Everyone's going to get it. But, you know, try telling that to my mom or my sister or someone who isn't on comic book Twitter. Like,
hang on. I got a good way to do it. Just make them like completely different. So for, of course, Viola Davis, just put her in a fucking fat suit. Put her in a fat suit with a bigger wig, with a big ass afro, and make her act like a little bit different. Or like with John Cena, just give him a whole different suit, and then maybe in some like episode explain how he's like, do a multiversal thing where, dude, would that not work? Do a multiversal episode where he's like consistent. He's one of the consistent characters that always looks like John Cena in every universe. So I think that could work. But go ahead, keep going, Jake.
I don't know. I'm like, if I got put in charge of the MCU, I'd either keep going with the trajectory they're going, or I'd do a clean break. Like, I wouldn't be like, okay, Tom Holland is still Spider-Man, but Robert Downey Jr. is not Iron Man, and Chris Hemsworth is Thor, but Scarlett Johansson is not Black Widow. Like, I feel like you do have to do one or the other. The other issue potentially that I see with James Gunn's vision for the DCU is he is a huge fan of obscure characters, which is awesome. And it worked so well for Guardians of the Galaxy. But now he's running the show completely. And so I could see Creature Commandos or The Authority being like huge, intense moments and critical chapters of this overarching story, which, you know, will help those movies and TV shows individually get more viewership and more people interested. But again, like for someone who's a little more mainstream, like, yeah, I really only care about Batman or Superman, are they going to even really be able to follow along, you know, just by going and seeing the more A-list characters that the general audience is just going to be more inclined to go see? So there is a bit of concern for me that he might rely too heavily on things that just won't be viewed by everybody. But yeah, it's this interesting combination where I think he did a great job with the Suicide Squad. I actually really liked that. But I think I'm yet to see how I feel about his sense of humor in a Superman movie, or his like sensibilities for more obscure characters, which again, he does a great job with, both in Guardians and the Suicide Squad. I think he knocked it out of the park both times, like really making some compelling decisions with those characters. But is that going to pay off for him in the long run or not? And
you want to know the other concern is, I think you raise a great point there. And then the other thing on top of that I would add is, it's a concern to me that he's kind of doing everything, in the sense that he's like the Kevin Feige of the universe. So he's supposed to oversee everything, but he's also directing a movie. And I've never directed a feature length movie, but seems pretty damn hard, and seems like it's going to take a lot of time. And so,
you know what else he's doing though? He's also doing Peacemaker season 2 right now. I'm pretty sure
this is my point, is like,
that's going.
What happened at the end of phase 4 with the MCU, like it's a disaster in my opinion. It's not great. They're having a lot of issues. Kevin Feige has addressed this as to what happened, and what happened is they went from making like 2 things a year, maybe 3, to like greenlighting all of these MCU shows on Disney Plus, because Disney wanted to make a whole bunch of money on their streaming platform, and they're like, we know how to print money. We just make 10 Marvel shows a year, and then we'll make a ton of money. And so what happened was Kevin Feige was then spread thin amongst all of these different projects happening, and he wasn't even directing anything. He was just in that overseer role. And so you have him being a showrunner of a television show, directing a movie, and then somehow also managing and overseeing all these other projects. That to me is a little bit of a concern. I don't think he should be directing the Superman movie. I understand the logic of him setting the tone of the universe, directing the first movie as the ringleader of the whole thing. But to me, I don't think that you can have all those hats at once, because they already are more than full-time jobs.
Well, and the other question is, would a different, I don't know, like, James Gunn films have tended to do well at the box office, from my understanding, especially the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. But Brightburn, which his name was heavily attached to, didn't do great, if I recall correctly. And The Suicide Squad was abysmal. Now, I'm not going to blame that on him. I think that was more due to COVID and other factors.
But it was still really low.
Yeah.
They weren't smart about that release at all. They like released that on stream like a month after release. Like it was, or maybe I think they released at the same time.
And it was during COVID, but it still made 167 million. Like that's bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
no, that's not good.
Like, the issue that I see with it is, like, I don't know why they're not setting this movie up for just a knock out of the park. Like, what they should be doing right now is marketing the hell out of My Adventures with Superman. They should be trying to get Smallville and, Lois and Clark and all of this backlog of shows and movies onto as many streaming services as they can. They should be doing like theatrical re-releases of some of the older movies and just trying to get Superman back into the spotlight. Like, they should be greenlighting a game from Warner Brothers Games Montreal, and maybe
to be fair, they got another year to really, and knowing of course like the marketing and whatnot, they're probably going to do it like the last 6 months, like in January they're probably going to do. I think I just saw like something on Twitter saying the first teaser trailer is going to come next year. So I mean, they're not going to release a teaser trailer potentially and until like the 2025. So yeah. I kind of agree that he could be stretched thin. But the way he makes this universe sound in many ways, or at least what he's saying online and whatnot to many comments, is that there is going to be an element of creative control over certain movies. So the people that are writing it, the people that are directing it, they have more of a, filmmaking job to do instead of being overseen in that department. But they're still going to make it connected in many ways. And there are concerns that could be going into this, but I think like this first phase that they have already kind of like locked down in many ways, like Batman, that's going to be having like Damian Wayne, or like, the Superman movie, all these little shows too that they're doing. It could work. And if they don't really of course, if they don't really expand the universe in those shows properly, or if they don't like kind of market those movies alongside these or the shows with the movies and whatnot, it could really like hurt them in many ways. But I think that they're smart, or at least I think James Gunn is at least hopefully smart enough to kind of like understand how his Guardians movies were kind of like hindered by Endgame and by Infinity War, because they killed off Gamora, and I don't think James Gunn wanted that for his last movie. So I think that he's going to really put a lot of effort into building this universe and crafting this universe, and it looks like he's already doing that with all these characters. And he could be stretched then potentially, but I don't know. It hasn't really shown any like potential drop in quality. I feel like the Suicide Squad is just as good as Guardians of the Galaxy, or like all 3 of those movies pretty much. Yeah. And I feel like the Superman movie, he said that he was offered this before and he didn't want to do it until he felt like it was right. And I feel like if he didn't have a good story to tell, or if he didn't have a proper story, I don't know, man. All these set photos, when there's one video of like the authoritarian like superheroes walking away, and then all the kids like rush Superman. I'm like, bro, this shit's wholesome as shit. I'm gonna love stuff like that. Or like the other one where he had a damaged suit, he was like running away from the Metropolis crowd that was chasing him. Like stuff like that is so Superman, because in like Zack Snyder's universe, if he was getting chased down by people, he would like heat up his freaking heat rays and be like, back the fuck up or some shit, and he would start acting evil. But this Superman looks like, if they really market it the proper way, it looks like it's a Superman that everybody's been waiting for. And I do think that this could really be a good start to the universe. And we're in a time right now where I think it could do. Look, a monkey and a freaking lizard, a giant lizard, are making like $500 million in the box office. I think Superman could do really good if it's like marketed a proper way.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying, is that Superman recently hasn't seemed to be much of a box office draw. Like, he was marketed heavily for Rocksteady Suicide Squad game, and even BVS, which didn't break $1 billion. Like, so my concern is, is this something that's going to make, money kind of like The Flash did, where like it doesn't quite break a profit, and it's just, I don't know. I feel like right now would be a great time for them to position a Superman movie to succeed the same way that like the Nolan films did. And Batman Begins wasn't much of a box office draw either, but word of mouth was so good, and they released a Lego Batman game. They had Batman Arkham Asylum coming out. Then they started reprinting great comics for the character. They had a great TV show at the time for kids going on. And so by the time The Dark Knight came out, it was a $1 billion hit. So I just think that Warner Brothers should be really careful and thoughtful about how they want to utilize this character, and how they want to market materials that maybe aren't even the James Gunn universe, like My Adventures with Superman. That's where I really could see the difference in the box office being like the difference between 200 million at the box office and like 800 million or $1 billion even. I just want really good content for DC. Like, I'm a huge fan of DC, and so I'm very much on the side of James Gunn, and I really want him to see his vision through. I also just think that they need to be thoughtful about how they kind of set these movies up to succeed. Because if Superman doesn't quite work, I mean, I think we have like The Authority coming out before we get a Batman or Supergirl movie.
Yeah. Well,
what the other thing to note that I think is pertinent here is that the infinite money glitch, money printing trick of the superhero movie has kind of dried up post MCU Phase 3.
Yeah.
There was a period not that long ago, less than 10 years ago, when if you made any comic book movie, it would make $1 billion. Like, even if it wasn't that good, even if it was just kind of like mid, whatever. I mean, like, even those, I mean, the X-Men movies, which in the mid 2010s, like the X-Men Dark Phoenix, didn't do very great, but the ones before that, like even X-Men Apocalypse did quite well.
God,
and
damn, I didn't know Batman Begins only made $373 million.
That's what I'm saying, and that's because that was 2000.
But the Batman made about 772 million, and while I will admit that thing was marketed like a mother, it was everywhere. It was literally everywhere. It still made like at least, it says like 500 million back. So there are still superhero movies that are, still potentially box office grabs. They just need to be the right movies marketed at the right time to like the right audience. And we just have to wait for Superman. I don't know. I feel like they're going to do it the last 6 months. Like, of course, it's coming out July 15th, I think. So
I mean, well, think about this. I mean, Suicide Squad, the 2016 one, which was absolutely shit on, made $745 million.
Mm-hmm.
The original Deadpool made $781 million on a budget of less than $100 million. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 made $869 million in 2017. BVS made $872 million, despite literally having a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And so I think the main thing now, Captain America Civil War made $1.1 billion, of course. And so I think the main thing that's changed is that, yes, you can still make a ton of money, but the movie has to be good. That's kind of the thing that has shifted, is that you can't make a movie like Suicide Squad that gets 20% on Rotten Tomatoes and make $800 million anymore. That's just kind of dried up. And so I also think that because just the quantity of superhero movies is so robust now, I don't think it can be as simple as just another generic background, like another generic superhero movie. It has to have something kind of unique and special about it, I think, too. A unique draw or compelling part of it that people really want to go see. And so I think, to Jake's point, we have to see if Superman has that. And so I could see a world where it makes quite a bit. I could also see a world where it's like kind of middling and only does like 350. And so then the question is, if it comes out of the gate and only makes 350, that is not a very good start to this universe. And so I think that DC is just behind the eight ball as always. They are that way in every single niche, except for video games. And even now they're behind in video games, but for a period they weren't.
I'm going to argue that I think that Superman's probably going to make 700 to 800 million just based off of the Batman. And I mean, the marketing from the Batman, if they do exactly that for like literally 4 or 5 months of just like.
But to Jake's point, though, Batman has more draw than Superman.
I know, but hear me out here. Here's the thing. Batman has more draw than Superman. But does he have more draw than Aquaman? Because how the hell did the first Aquaman movie make $1 billion, bro?
Because that was in the infinite money printing era. That's what I'm saying. How much did Aquaman 2 make?
It made $400 million. That's
exactly. That's my
point.
But
it didn't have good marketing. It didn't have good marketing. It was the same. It was like almost the same generic plot where it's this Black Manta trying to kill. But that's the thing, is that the Superman movie, again, if they're trying to market it as a new universe, kind of like how they did Batman, I know they weren't trying to like make it like a new brand new DCEU universe or whatever. They're just trying to make it its own thing. I feel like, again, market it like that, shove it down people's throat until they want to see it. And Batman was like 3 hours long. If Superman could be a good 2 hour, like 20-minute movie, people are going to flock to it. And especially if it's like by the guy who made Guardians of the Galaxy, by the guy that made the Suicide Squad. I mean, who knows how many people actually saw the Suicide Squad after its, box office run. But, people are going to know James Gunn's name. People are going to see this and be like, oh, this is like really something new. There's a new Superman that's not like dark, depressing, or fucking evil. So I think people are kind of more excited than what most people are leading on. I think it's going to make around that much. How much do you think that Superman will make, guys?
I think it's going to be 450.
450? Jake?
I would love for it to be 800, but I don't see that.
I'm betting on it. I'm a betting man.
I'm gonna
see it happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna just put mine right at about 500 million, just because, like Kobe, I'd love for it to be like a $950 million movie that just everyone loves and everyone goes and sees. But after The Flash in particular, a movie that by all accounts should have been $1 billion movie. I mean, that was essentially DC's Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yep.
Like a fan favorite character, bringing back Michael Keaton as Batman, like that should have appealed to pretty much everyone. Like they brought back Ben
The Flash?
Yeah, The Flash.
I don't know. I feel like Ezra Miller kind of tainted that a lot.
Yeah,
I feel like,
dude, but they brought back Batman from another movie, and they they had a cameo.
I think that even made people more confused. No matter how much multiversal bullshit they try to pull, it's like
confused for Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man 3 in the MCU.
Well, that all kind of had like some type of logic there. But that's like saying, like, okay, it's really like taking Spider-Man, and instead of bringing in Tobey Maguire and Andrew into their world, you throw Tom Holland into like the Sony universe, and you have zero reference to any.
But that would make $1 billion too, though. That would.
I mean, obviously, it's Spider-Man.
It would.
Yeah, it's Spider-Man. But the Flash. I don't think the Flash. I don't think the
brand is tainted with the mainstream audience. It's tanked, and it has to make it
absolutely. Comeback. I think a lot of that has to do with, of course, the DCEU and how that all like unraveled. They did the most stupidest decisions by having Man of Steel and then immediately trying to set up the Justice League. It's like they had no time to really take their time because they were already being rushed by Marvel in many ways. But now Marvel's in the dumper, like Kobe said. If Marvel's in the dumper and they're looking for something new, the audience is looking for something to kind of, bring in more interest to the superhero movie landscape. I feel like James Gunn's the one that's trying to do that in some way by bringing and introducing another new universe.
I agree.
So I think that if this is, again, it all really does fall onto the marketing. And so far, these set photos are already blowing up the internet. Like, there are so many people that are looking at this right now, and the first trailer's not even out, and people are already having discourse about this movie continuously. And a lot of it is good word of mouth. Like, no matter how many Snyder losers say it's bad, no matter how many people think that it's bad, the large majority of people see this and they're like, that's Superman, that's Mr. Terrific, and this looks like it's going to have at least a fun vibe to it. So if they stick to that and they continue to kind of like keep doing what they're doing, I think it was really smart to shoot on location too. So it kind of like gives people the general idea that it's not going to look like like a really fake movie. They're actually shooting on location. They're letting you see these characters do things out in the open. So I think that right there is also another element that's going to add to this movie. And I feel something in it. You know, I'm feeling the vibe that this movie's going to do really, really good, despite the taintedness of the DC brand, because they are, I agree. Like, again, Aquaman not being able to pass 500 million, despite it making $1 billion the first time. Like, where'd the audience go? Like, that's insane. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, and to be fair, like, there are those surprises, like Joker, an R-rated movie that doesn't have Batman in it, making $1 billion. Nobody saw that. Same with Aquaman. The first Aquaman movie, no one expected that to be $1 billion hit. So there is a chance, and especially like you're saying, I do think the movie is going to be like legitimately good. I think it's going to have some great word of mouth. So there is the possibility that, it walks away with 800 million at the box office. I'm going to keep my estimate at about 500 million just because I'm a coward and I'm going to keep it in the safe zone. So that if it
No, honestly, the pessimistic side of me is thinking like maybe 400. If it's like if somehow something comes out about the movie that's like bad about it, it could hit like 400 million, like that Flash range, that Aquaman range. But yeah.
The other thing, though, is that I think Warner Brothers needs to be willing to take a few losses right now. They need to be willing to put out movies that get great word of mouth that people love, but don't make tons of money. And they almost need to do what they did for Nolan's universe, because kind of like I mentioned back, even when Batman Begins tanked, not really tanked. That's really harsh.
It was middling.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't like, not what it could have been, as we saw from The Dark Knight a few years later. But Warner Brothers could tell from the word of mouth interviews, okay, there's something here. And so then they went and greenlit a Lego game so that kids would start getting invested in the character. Then they went to Rocksteady and started producing the Arkham game. And so by the time The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises are coming out, Batman is on every lunchbox at every kid's middle school. It's like just everywhere. Like the Batman logo's everywhere. There's a great backlog of content. So they almost need to be willing to look at Superman, even if it doesn't break, $600 million, and say, well, it's a good movie that people like. So yeah, we're going to continue with the sequel, and we're going to do everything we can to make Superman a pop culture icon so that the next one works better.
My thought process here is like, also, is James Gunn like really in charge of the movies? Because if he is, who's going to tell him no to make a sequel, right? Who's going to be like, hey, you can't do this? Why don't he just do it anyway, even if it doesn't do that good?
I feel like David Zaslav at any time could go and fire him and be like,
that fucking little gremlin.
All right. Well, I think we're at about an hour. Anything else we want to discuss? I feel like that was I feel like we're good.
I was about to talk about the Arkham Asylum show that got canceled just for a little bit.
Let's do that. Go ahead.
Because I guess in many ways people think that, again, Snyder cultists, what the fuck's wrong with those people? They're thinking that this, like, it's a really weird story too, because people don't know if it's a part of the DCU or part of the Batman universe. But this Arkham Asylum show was originally for the Batman universe. There were word to mouth things saying that it might be transitioned into the DCU, of course. But the main thing is that it got canceled, and it's not from another report. It said that it might get reworked again into the DCU as something else. So it's still kind of like up in the air. But this thing is like, a lot of people are saying that it's bad for the Batman, that the Batman Part 2 or like the Batman Part 3 or whatever, those movies are going to be in jeopardy because, James Gunn's so willing to delete whatever version of the Batman Arkham Asylum show was like. I don't believe that. And I think that a lot of people are being stupid about it. But yeah, the Arkham Asylum show did sound interesting. Like, I was actually very excited to see an Arkham Asylum show where, you could see the inner workings and like new criminals coming in and getting put in there, maybe like little like faint hints of Batman and whatnot. And then maybe there's a breakout. And then you have maybe the criminal's point of view of like Arkham Asylum, the game, or like Arkham
Ooh,
Asylum,
that's cool.
that house, where you see Batman running through the asylum and you just see shadows and whatnot, and you have to like get away and you see each villain's point of view. So I think that could have been
dude, that would be a lot cooler than the Penguin show, which I'm looking forward to the Penguin.
Hey,
but
Kobe,
what?
Shut up, bro. Shut up, bro.
I just said I'm looking forward to it. I just said that. I said I'm looking forward to it, but Arkham Asylum would be a lot cooler.
Oh, okay.
It would be.
You got me there. You got me there. What if the Penguin show is such a success that they're like, okay, fine, we'll do the Arkham Asylum show. Whatever rework they did, they're like, oh crap, people like that other thing.
Yeah, so nice. like during our discussion last time where I talked about, I don't know, like maybe there will come a point where James Gunn decides to phase out the Batman. The reason that I said that was because, if they start seeing where like The Brave and the Bold comes out and maybe it doesn't do as well as the Batman Part 2, then there might be some discussions about, okay, how do we handle this? Because we're kind of eating our own audience. Like we're putting out two competing Batman universes out at the same time. Is that really beneficial to us or not really? And I almost feel like this is a way for them to kind of gauge how people respond. So they have the Penguin show coming out, and if it's a huge hit, then I feel like we're going to get a lot of more shows greenlit. And if I remember, I'm trying to remember if this was confirmed or just speculation, but wasn't the Matt Reeves verse, weren't they going to do like a Poison Ivy movie and a Scarecrow movie and a Clayface movie? Like they've been talking about a lot of
I think there were just rumors. I don't know if there was anything really substantiated about that besides just like random. I think it was actually from this one random guy named My Time to Shine, who's like, he's like a 50-50 rate on Twitter. He's really not that accurate. So I don't believe that guy, because he's saying like Court of Owls is going to be in the Batman Part 2 and Robin's going to be in the Batman Part 2. Like, how the fuck? He's still writing the script. How could you potentially even know this, dude? So I don't really believe that guy. But again, that could have been the case, and it could have been like, we don't want to do that for, reasons of another universe. And, there are potential, it could be like a competitive thing where, the Batman Part 2 makes like 700 million, and then, Brave and the Bold comes out, only makes like 500 million. And then James Gunn's like, well, we kind of want this DCU thing to be a little bit more successful than just 500 for a Batman movie. So you got to make one more and then you're done. So I feel like, I don't think they're going to stop Matt Reeves' potential plans, like whatever he has right now. The Arkham Asylum show, we don't even really know. Again, there was reports that was in the DCU, that it was in the Batman universe. Like we don't even know where it was going to lie in the universe. Yeah. So in many ways, that could be a bad sign for the Batman universe. But again, the way that James Gunn talked about Matt Reeves recently about the Batman, saying like he could take all the time in the world to write that script. He's ready when he's ready. That gives me some confidence that he's not going to just pull the plug on the plans that they potentially have. Because if this Part 2, he's not like, I don't know if he's overseeing, I doubt he's overseeing the script, but if this Part 2 kind of leads into a Part 3, then like I don't think James Gunn's gonna be like, okay, we can't do this anymore. I think he's going to give Matt Reeves maybe a third movie and then pull the plug. But and it could be that whole competitive thing where it's like 500 million for their Batman movie, and they're like, well, the Batman's kind of like screwing us here. I could see something like that happening.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I would love nothing more than for it all to work out. Like I would love if just awesome filmmakers could go to James Gunn and pitch like, hey, I know that you're doing Superman in the DCU. I have like a standalone Superman trilogy that I've really wanted to do, and here's my pitch for it. And I'd love if James Gunn could be like, yeah, we can greenlight it. Like we can have these alternate versions of the characters that are more standalone. Like I think that would be cool for Marvel to do too. Like now that Steve Rogers is kind of out of the picture, I think it would be really interesting to do like a World War II trilogy where it's a different actor and you get to explore his rogues gallery a little bit more. But yeah, no, overall, like going back to Arkham Asylum, I'm with you. I think that the potential for an Arkham Asylum show is so cool. The setting is so unique, and there's been so many different takes on what that world looks like and, which villains are currently incarcerated. But there's so much potential for what that could have been. And I think it's a bummer that we're not getting that. especially because I agree with Kobe that sounds like the more interesting project than Penguin. Even though I'm looking forward to Penguin too. Penguin has this cool like year one vibe to it, or more Long Halloween, I mean. But yeah, no, Arkham Asylum would have been great.
Yeah, I do like the fact that they're doing more, or they're being like more risky with the TV shows, because I see the Penguin kind of like the TV version of Joker, like in many ways. So I
Yeah.
think that them doing like a character study of the Penguin and his rise from, Falcone being gone to him becoming the Penguin that we know, dude, that would be so fucking hilarious. If he earns his umbrella, I don't know if I would actually like the show if they do that shit. He's gonna like pop out of a car like, yeah, I got this shit, and he's just gonna like float away or some shit. I do think that the show, if it bombs, they're not gonna really try to go for that type of TV show. They're probably just gonna do whatever they do with the DCU. So they're probably gonna keep like the standalone TV show stuff away. I don't know how they like kind of like determine if it's a bomb, since it's only coming out on Max or whatever.
It would be viewership. Like
Views, viewerships, yeah. I guess word of mouth too is kind of a part to play. But yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for the Penguin, but I think the Arkham Asylum show, again, like the point of view of the villains, seeing them from that like other side and like seeing them interact, especially like the Batman villains too. I feel like doing that in the Batman universe could have really built that universe so much more than what is like, what it is. Like seeing all those different villains and like the different like iterations of them, it could have really done something like special for the universe in a way. And even if it happened in the DCU too, or like whatever universe they're calling it, that could have also been fairly interesting just to see that concept played out in there, and maybe see like this Batman and how he operates just a little bit differently than the other Batmans or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of sad that this show's going. I hope that whatever rework they're doing, they actually rework it into something similar to like an Arkham Asylum show, or maybe they do just like a flat out Batman show or Gotham show or whatever that doesn't involve Batman. I don't know how many people would actually like that, but it would be interesting.
And part of the issue, I think, with speculating when stuff like this happens is, for all we know, I mean, Matt Reeves could have been the one to say, actually, you know what? I don't want to develop this right now, because a lot of the ideas in this show I actually want to put in my movie. Like, I think that these are better plot points for the Batman Part 2, for example. Like, we just don't know why the plug was pulled. It could have been James Gunn saying, you know what, I want to see how the Penguin does and how the Batman Part 2 does before we start greenlighting more stuff here. But no, there's a lot of potential. They could do like, yeah, maybe in the Batman Part 2 you have Mr. Freeze show up as kind of a side villain, and then you do a whole 6-episode show where it's like his origin, where Ferris Boyle kidnaps his wife, and it's this revenge plot where he's trying to go after him. Like, there's a lot of really interesting characters and stories that could be told in the Batman universe, and sometimes I think those are better when they're separated a little bit from the larger DC universe, and that's what Matt Reeves has done really well. So we'll see how the Penguin does and how the Batman Part 2 does. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Arkham Asylum would have been so cool.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see if they rework that into anything. Kobe, you got any final thoughts?
No, not besides echoing what I said last time, that the Penguin show is boring. Just kidding.
You're going to throw hands.
I just wanted to troll you. No. I really do think it looks good. I think that they need to decide what they are doing and move boldly and definitively in that direction. Do not pussyfoot around in two different camps. Do not try to placate multiple different and so you've got a lot of things you're managing here with the Joker universe, the Batman universe, the former DC universe, the new DC universe, and you have to clearly delineate. Yes.
Would you get confused or do you think your mom would be confused, right? If she watched the Batman, she saw the Penguin, and she saw the Batman in The Brave and the Bold, but that Penguin's played like by Peter Dinklage or whatever.
Yes.
Do you think she would get confused? Yeah.
Yes.
Or she would be like, why is he like 4 foot now?
She would be like, why is there somebody different playing Batman? Who is this other Batman? I thought the Batman was the Twilight guy.
Yeah, when I took my dad to BVS back in the day, I was like, what'd you think? And he's like, well, I liked it. I don't really understand why they did the recast, and I don't understand how Bruce Wayne came back to Gotham, but it was cool. Like, it was a continuation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Y'all capping.
Marcel is he's not connected to the normies like Jake and I. We're
I
connected to the
am.
normies. Marcel is
I'm
like,
telling.
you're
Maybe
in
my.
your
I
own
don't.
world over there.
I
with
don't know.
everyone
I'm telling
that
you.
knows
I'm
this
telling you.
shit. Your mom is she knows about this shit.
Yeah, I don't know how she knows about this shit, but I'm just saying, if she saw Peter Dinklage as freaking Penguin and she saw
but then
Colin
she'd be
Farrell
like,
as
where
Penguin,
I
she'd be
thought
like,
that Batman was this person, and I
no,
thought
she'd be
Batman
like,
was
this
doing
is
this.
a different universe.
No,
This
she
is
wouldn't.
something different.
How are you gonna tell me what my mom would think?
Oh, your mom. I thought you were talking about my mom. I was about to say, why are you talking about my mom and what she would think?
No, what I'm saying, that's exactly my point, is what I'm saying is that your mom would understand, but mine wouldn't. And
I get it.
So
But
everyone,
I think a good way to do this, I think a good way to fix this problem for the whole DC universe and the multiverses and everything that they have is just stamping freaking movies as Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, blah, blah, blah. If they want to make different interpretations, like of course, the prime Earth right now would be the DCU. The next Earth would be the Batman. The next Earth after that, Earth 3, is going to be the Joker. Earth 4 or whatever is fucking the DCEU. And I think if they put that stamp on there and they maybe do it in a way that's at least intelligible for most people, like, oh, this is Earth 1, so and so forth, whatever. This is all different. I think that could work.
It could, yeah. Like, again, I don't think that fixes like the necessarily mainstream people going to see the movie. Like, I cannot tell you how often like I've taken my family to go see a movie, a comic book movie, and I end up spending as long as the movie was trying to explain it to them. Just because, like, I mean, even with No Way Home, that was one that people really liked and it made a lot of money. I remember having to sit down with like my sister and explain, like, yeah, no, this was from this movie. This is paying off this plot from this movie. And it was like, she liked it, but she was really confused. And I feel like this is taking it even a step further, where you have like, it would be like watching Batman Begins and then going and watching the first Michael Keaton movie and then watching The Dark Knight. And, for someone like me, that would be totally fine. And I just recognize, yeah, I'm watching two different takes on the character. But I know a number of people that would be like either confused or like, why should I care about two ongoing universes at the same time?
I understand that. I feel like there's some way, like, I don't know. I feel like there's some way to get those people that would be confused to understand that there are different like branches in like the movie, whatever universe or whatever, to make them understand. But yeah, the normies, they don't get it, man. I'm not around them, Kobe. I'm not around them normies. I'm around
like, I don't know,
above
those
average people, those normies. Oh, I feel like I'm saying a slur. It feels so good.
Oh my God.
On
that note, that is episode 3 of the Anonymous season 2. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to be back next week to discuss whatever shenanigans happens between now and then. Who knows? I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But nonetheless, we'll be here next week and chat with you then.